Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dreamleapers Inspiration. I'm your host, Harriet Cole. Very honored to be with you today on what is a tough day for a lot of people. We learned today that Colin Powell lost his life due to complications from COVID. We learned that he had been vaccinated. We know that he's someone who certainly would have been given the top care possible. And so there's immediate loss that we feel as a nation because a great man who served our country for so many years has left us, but left us in due to this disease that has plagued our country for nearly 2 years. I think that many of us have had what could be a false sense of hope that the vaccination miraculously means that we can't get sick if we even can get the disease. That's not what vaccinations promise. But there's been so much political turmoil around COVID-19 and all that it has meant for our people and people around the world that it's sometimes difficult to figure out where the truth is. I'm not wanting to spend time talking about politics today or even about COVID, but more about loss. It's so important when we lose people that we love that we honor that loss. And it can be difficult. It can, because loss is an interesting thing. It happens at the least opportune moments, right? The least opportune moments. Think about it. You're going through your day, your week, your life, and someone you love leaves us, dies. That complete loss that happens in the midst of whatever your routines are disrupts your routines. Truly, loss is a disruption. It's a disruption of pacing. It's a disruption of schedule. It's a disruption of the heart. It's a disruption of life. It's an ending of life for someone, and in part, an ending of an aspect of that person's life with those who are left behind. And so, how do we honor it? It's very interesting. In recent days and weeks, I have had the experience of a tremendous amount of loss. And, we all do at different points, but there could be long stretches where you don't necessarily notice it, and then intense periods where you do. For me personally, I have had some intense periods of loss recently. And I'll give you just a few examples just to share kind of how I dealt with it, and maybe it will provide some insight for you. I do believe that examples are incredibly helpful for us as we process what's happening in our lives. So, in a very busy week last week, I am talking busier than I have been in a long time. And those who know me know my schedule is very full. In the middle of that, I was traveling again because now we're outside a little bit. Because before everything, the past almost 2 years, I've just been working from home. I was headed to a meeting and riding in the back of a Lyft car and pulled out my phone and said, let me just check up on everything. So I was looking through social media and saw that my next door neighbor's mother had passed away a few hours earlier. Wow. And this is a woman who just had a baby 3 months ago, I think. My husband, daughter, and I had the privilege of watching her 4-year-old on the July 4th weekend when she was having her baby. And that was amazing because we have not cared for a child. I think he's 3 or 4. He's little. We haven't cared for a child that young since our daughter was that young, and she's almost 18. So it was quite an adventure spending time with this young boy, but also at a time when our friend, his mother, was bringing life into the world. It was a beautiful experience, and we were very grateful that we could support her and her family during this time. And we'll always remember that. Well, this woman lost her mother suddenly, and my friend lives here next door to me in Harlem. Her mother lives in Israel. Part of Jewish tradition is that you bury people as soon as possible after they pass. And for many reasons, my friend was unable to go to Israel quickly enough for her to be present this at this transition point to bury her mother. So she had to watch it over WhatsApp. This is something that so many people have experienced over the past year and a half for lots of reasons, because quarantine meant that people couldn't be together in the ways in which we wanted. And indeed, part of the reason why she couldn't go is because of the continuing restrictions on travel. Loss. In the middle of an incredibly busy week, I put on the brakes. Thank goodness I was able to do that. And I spent a couple of hours with her, just hearing about her mom, inviting her to honor her mom by telling me about her and talking about her and allowing memories to bubble forth that she hadn't even thought of in years, because, hey, she's the mother of two very young children. Her time is occupied differently. And it was wonderful to be able to be a vessel to receive those stories, to honor her mother in that way. Just less than a month ago, the elder whose home my family and I lived in this summer, last summer, and the previous summer, but especially during these COVID summers, this man made his transition. We had just been with him weeks before, and we all knew he was ill, but being ill and leaving us, that's not the same thing. The way in which his family honored him every day using social media, which they had used all the time to tell stories about him, being able to have an in-person service as well as a streamed experience for those who couldn't come, was just beautiful. I was invited to participate, and I was able to share stories about the intimate relationship that we've developed in recent years. I haven't had my father for more than 20 years, and while he didn't replace my father, he certainly was a father figure, an incredible elder in our community who was and is beloved by so many. I could tell you more. This period right now has been a period of tremendous loss. The woman who is known as my special or my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. So when I became a Delta back in 1981, she was the one who took me under her wing and cared for me and loved me and continued to love me. And she very tragically got early onset Alzheimer's when she was, I think, in her 40s. And she recently made her transition. Loss is difficult. Loss of life, loss of love. During my Dreamleapers retreat, the first one we've ever done, which was this past weekend, a good friend of mine, Sekou Wrights, spoke about life after loss for him, a pivot after loss. And he talked about, in his case, it wasn't specifically death, but incredible transitions and heartbreak that created a hole in his world that he needed to fill. And how he did it was to really deeply take care of himself and transform himself, his health, his being, his spirit, and then begin to create a different kind of work in service to others. Honor loss. When we honor the things that we lose, whether it is friends, family, people whom we love, whether it's relationships that have ended, whether it's pets that have transitioned. I say that because my family just lost a pet tragically, and that's like losing a child. And I know that from other people. My immediate family, we don't have pets, but the rest of my family does, and many of my friends do. And I remember one of my friends who had a dog for many, many years held a funeral for the dog. And that was her baby. She didn't have children. That was her baby. And my family recently lost a pet, as I say, tragically, and the pain is deep. When you love and you lose, you have pain. And you have to allow yourself to experience that pain. As you experience it, you also need to recognize that there's power in allowing yourself to go through the experience. There's healing that must happen. It can only happen if you allow yourself to go through all of the stages of loss. The pain, the anger, the hurt, all to the point of finding peace. And I say this because sometimes people don't do that. Sometimes people do not allow themselves to go through the whole transitional experience, and then when they don't, they get stuck. I remember a woman in my community in Baltimore who had been married for many, many years, had one child, and one day her husband said he was leaving. And in our community, divorce was not really a thing. There were a lot of nuclear families, mother, father, children. And for the most part, the people were solid units and they stayed married. Who knows what happened in their houses, but they stayed married. And so this was unusual. This man left, and his wife wilted. She was unable to let go, to forgive, and to move on, to see a life beyond that loss. And she, over a number of years, got sick and passed away. And if you talk to medical professionals, you will hear it can happen that you can die of a broken heart. In fact, my grandmother's mother, we were told, died of a broken heart. This was so long ago in the early 1800s, but her husband was a sailor. He was in the military, I believe, in Europe, in England. And he left one day and never came back. And my grandmother's mother was not able to heal her heart from that, and she perished. If you don't honor loss and allow it to have its full transition, you get stuck in it, it's not healthy. Yes, there has to be a period of mourning, whatever that transition is, but holding on is unhealthy. Not allowing yourself to let go makes the loss like an anchor. It drags you into the sea and drowns you. And so we can't do that. And another one of my very, very dear friends lost her partner of 27 years. And I didn't realize that she was depressed. She talked a good game, and we do that too. And she acted like everything was okay. And then after a while, it's like something's wrong. And she would say, I think of him every day. I think of all the things that we did every day. I can't do any of those things anymore. And I think she believed she was honoring him by not allowing herself to live. But that's not honoring loss. That's putting a noose around your neck. That's, I'll say, dishonoring it. If you want to honor someone's life, continue to live. If you want to honor the legacy of someone you love, think of all the great things about that person and incorporate those great things into the way that you live. That's a way to honor life, to honor another. But to just be sad and to feel that you can't move forward will mean that there's another loss, a loss of spirit, a loss of heart, a loss of potential that I want to say is not, it's not what God wants for us, however you understand God. With loss, in honoring loss, yes, we grieve, we mourn. We are deeply hurt when we lose someone, something that we love. And then we have to open our eyes and look around. And one of the things in African American culture that we learn is you don't fully lose anyone if you hold on to their memory. Holding on to their memory is different from holding the weight of their death. There's a difference. Holding on to their memory is honoring the great things about the person such that you can be inspired again and again by what you recall. I tell stories of my grandmother, Carrie Freeland, all the time. She lived to be 101 years old. She's been gone for a long time. She was born in 1889. I was a very young woman when she passed away, and I think of her all the time. Not the loss of her, but the strength of her, the memories of her. And she was the person who, when I was growing up in the 70s, when the Black Power movement was really strong, and my grandmother was a domestic worker, and I got it in my head that she didn't need to work for these rich white people anymore. Why was she doing that? She could come home, we could take care of her. And I asked her why she was working for them still. Now, she was really old, so just the fact that she was working at all was amazing. She worked till she was 93. But that wasn't the point for her. That was part of my point. Come on, we can take care of you. You don't have to work anymore. We can take care of you. Me as, a kid who has no job, but I knew my parents could take care of her. And she sat me down, this woman who was a foot shorter than me, but a huge spirit. And she said to me, let me tell you something. Don't worry about me. I love the people that I work for, and I love my work. And your responsibility when you grow up is to love the people you work for and with, and love the work that you do. That's it. She refused to let me have on blinders because of a stereotype. Now, sure, there are some people who belong to any ethnic group, whatever the group is, any group, who fit into whatever the stereotype is that could be negative about them. But she's like, that's not my issue. The people I work for love me and I love them. We're good. And that's how you need to live your life. And that lesson, I've told it 1,000 times, more probably, because it's important even in this moment. We are in this racial reckoning right now. And it is so easy to say all, name the group of people, are like this. That's how we got here, isn't it? That all Black men are criminals. All Black men are dangerous. All white people hate Black people. All Asian Americans are whatever they get called. either the smartest, and then what happens to all the people who are just regular folk. Whatever the stereotypes are, when we get caught up in those stereotypes, it's dangerous. It's divisive. It's unhelpful for living our lives. And so I recall my grandmother, Carrie Freeland's wisdom, even though she's been gone for decades. She's not gone for me. I recall my father, Harry Cole, for whom I am named, who taught my sisters and me that excellence is the only option. Now, when I was growing up, that felt so extreme. Like, what? And he wasn't alone. This is something that Black families in particular teach their kids. You have to be at least work twice as hard and be twice as good as your white counterparts in order to get a chance. And that thinking is born out of people's experience. But the way my father said it to me was not from the perspective of race. He said it from the perspective of, if you're a member of this family, you need to understand excellence is the only option. You reach for the best. You reach as high as you can reach. And if you don't get to the top, you keep reaching. To not do your best is not an option. My father's been gone since 1999. I remember that almost every day. My daughter is applying for colleges. She's got it in her head. For her, every essay, every supplement, excellence is the only option. Is that pressure? Yes, but it's a pressure that has propelled my family and me to greatness. It's part of why I created Dreamleapers, because I believe that if you access the greatness within you and you cultivate it, you make yourself and the world better. That reach toward the best, toward excellence, comes from my father. That that inner look for greatness and goodness comes from my mother and her mother. That absolute understanding that you must be good and kind and live in service to others, that that's the way to walk in the world. That's something that I learned from my family, and that my sisters and I and our families, that's the way that we live. We learned it from our families. Our mother, thank God, is here with us, about to turn 92. But those other elders are gone, but not gone from our hearts or from, it's like from our DNA. We continue to live the lessons that they have taught us. And that's why if you honor loss, and especially the loss of loved ones, you honor them by capturing the greatness that they shared with you, that they demonstrated, and carrying that forward. Do you see how that is different from just grief, from extreme sadness, from disabling sadness? Do you see the difference? That immediate disabling sadness may be an experience that you have, or it may come down the line in the grieving process. And I say that because a lot of times when people are so busy making arrangements to send their loved ones off to honor their transition, that's a busy time. So a lot of times people just go into checking off boxes and doing what they have to do. Later is when it's quiet, maybe the time when your spirit is like, oh my gosh, I can't handle the pain. But you can. And I want to suggest that the way that you handle the pain is to honor the legacy of those that you've lost. What is great about them? What do you remember about them? What do you want to carry forward about them? If we know people well, we know that they're imperfect. There are things they did that were great. There are things they did that were not so great. Some people have bigger doses of greatness than others. And I'm not talking having to be, you know, the military leader that Colin Powell was, or the judge that my father was. You could be the domestic worker that my grandmother was. There's greatness in each of us. When we want to honor loss, we want to honor the greatness in people. And sometimes that greatness is even, perhaps we have observed how our loved ones managed challenge and difficulty. If they faced tremendous odds, had huge stumbles, and picked themselves up, figured out how to overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Greatness is not pie in the sky. Greatness is resilience, vision, steadfastness, compassion, empathy, friendship, love. Look for stories that illustrate those qualities in those you have lost. Write them down. You know me, I always want us to write things down. Write down the great stories about the people that you love. When you do that, you get to hold onto those memories. You know those stories. And when the moment comes where you need to draw upon a story to fill your heart and soul or share with others something that will fill their heart and soul, you already know it. You don't have to dig around in your memories to find it because you've captured it already. I call these stories about our lives the tools that we can put in our toolbox. I recommend that we capture and record our own stories about our lives, starting from our ancestral heritage up to this moment. But now, as we're talking about loss, I want to suggest to all of us that we record the stories of the people whom we have lost, and capture the things that warm our hearts, that stir our souls. What is it about those people that makes us love them? What is it about them that's worth remembering and sharing with others? Record it, capture it. Allow it to soothe you during this tender moment. What did you gain from the experience of that loved one that you want to carry forward? When you do that, it's almost like a salve for your soul. Because when you do that, you are no longer simply sitting in pain. You are choosing to lift yourself up with love, with loving memories. It's a choice. I talk about this all the time. We have choices in every moment. How are we going to choose to honor loss? We don't want to languish in loss. We want to honor loss. Honoring it helps to uplift us. That's why at funerals and memorial services, people are invited to share stories about their loved ones. And I'm going to say, I've been to many of these services. 99% of the time, people share stories that are uplifting. Occasionally, you get somebody who comes up there and shares something crazy, but maybe even the crazy will put a smile on your face and keep you up. That sharing, that articulation of what is special about that person helps to uplift them, helps them, their spirits to transition, and helps us to rise, helps us to not feel collapsed, but to be uplifted, to rise, to believe in our hearts that we can move forward. Helps us to see a path to a less fragile heart. It is essential for us to continue living, for us to honor loss, not languish in loss, honor it. And so, for everyone out there, everyone who is connected to me in this broadcast right now, I want to ask you, if you have suffered loss in your life right now, in this period, write down what and who the loss is. If there's more than one, make a list. Please do this. Write down what the loss is. And then, what did you love about that person, that relationship, that job, that pet, that possession? What did you love about it? And as you release the pain, what can you hold on? What can you hold on to that will help you to have energy, that will help you to be uplifted, that will put a smile on your face? What memory, what experience, what connection can you recall? And maybe there are many, and maybe it's hard to find one, but find one that you can hold up in the light and say, I can remember this when my heart is feeling tender about this loss. Write it down and honor the loss by remembering that. And if you have many things you remember, that's all the more joyful. Write them down. Because there will come a time, it could be later today, it could be next week, it could be 10 years from now, when your heart is feeling tender again about this loss, you can refer to your list. Ah, yes, that's something I learned. Ah, yes, I can smile because I remember this great thing about that relationship. Promise me that you'll do this. You can honor loss by looking deeply into the relationship and finding the greatness in it. What connected you to that person, experience, relationship? What? Capture it, write it down, honor it. I do hope that you will do this. I promise you that it works. Even if you feel that there's a lot of sadness swirling about, that there's a lot of loss swirling about, well, there is. But there's also a lot of life swirling about. Like my neighbor, friend, she has I think, 3-month-old baby. So her mother has left us, but her baby has joined us. The cycle of life includes birth and death. It does. We can't change that. Our relationship to birth and death is what's so important. I offer you my love from the depths of my heart. Please do this exercise to honor loss in your life. It works. I promise you it works. Until next time, have a great day and make it count. Namaste.